The first episode of 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙏 impressed me on multiple different fronts, and even though I thoroughly enjoyed my experience with the first episode, coming into the second, I was a bit nervous, I'm not gonna lie. Like I said in my last video on the series, I left episode 1 with a feeling of anticipation, right? A feeling that this show had potential, but by that same vein, I was cautious about really getting heavily invested in the 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙏 because, I mean, let's just keep it a full stack right now. You really can't even begin to tell how good an anime is gonna be until at least like 2 or 3 episodes in at the bare minimum. I think we've all fallen victim to at least one anime that's pulled the old okie doke episode 1 method where they like sell their souls to make episode 1 go as crazy as possible in hopes of reeling in as many viewers as they can, and then you get to episodes 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, and the quality of the show is just not what you were sold in that initial episode 1. 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙏, like a lot of shows, came out of the gate really strong in episode 1, but when it comes to episode 2, that shit was still tough, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm glad to report, ladies and gentlemen, that for the time being, 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙏 has officially beat the episode 1 method allegations. Today we're going to be talking about the second episode of 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙏. The show is admittedly moving in somewhat of a different direction than what I expected coming out of episode 1, but hey, look, bruh, I'm not mad at it. What I am mad at, however, is that bullshit ass follow-up that we got after episode 1's cliffhanger. You see, those of you who remember episode 1 will probably remember that we left off on a rather galvanizing cliffhanger. Our main character, Lin Ling, aka the new 𝙏𝙖, came home to find his girlfriend, well, fake girlfriend, but he came home to find his girlfriend, Moon, dead in the bed. But come to find out, and this is moving into episode 2 territory now, Moon was simply not dead. She was actually alive and well, and this shocking nail-biter cliffhanger that we were sold in episode 1 was nothing more than a nightmare that Lin was having as he slept on the couch. Corny ass, fake ass cliffhanger aside though, we start off episode 2 by getting somewhat of a Moon backstory that also kind of gives us some deeper exposition into the power system of this world. We already know that in the world of 𝙏𝙖𝙡𝙏, one's power level scales to the amount of people that trust in them. However, what we learn through Moon is that your fans don't just determine the magnitude of your powers, they also determine the nature of your powers in general. So Moon, for instance, started off as like this online travel blogger type chick who gained a pretty sizable following of fans through her IG, and eventually, after she had amassed enough fans to manifest powers, she ended up manifesting the ability to wield this teleportation gun, since her fans were mainly invested in like seeing her, you know, travel to different parts of the world. We also learned that Moon and 𝙏𝙖 started dating after 𝙏𝙖 saved her on like a hero mission gone awry, but when we cut back to the present, back to 𝙏𝙖's penthouse where Moon and Lin are staying, we come to find out that Moon is basically tapped into the fact that the 𝙏𝙖 that's with her right now is not actually the original 𝙏𝙖. Lin ends up revealing to Moon that the real 𝙏𝙖, you know, hit the despawn, and after a brief pause to process this information, Moon is suddenly like, oh hell yeah, say less. I can finally be free from this weak ass 360 deal PR relationship that 𝙏𝙖's management company has me locked into. Now apparently 𝙏𝙖 and Moon's relationship wasn't all as sweet as the public thought it was, right? We don't really get too many details about what exactly went sour within the relationship, but according to Moon, 𝙏𝙖 had this bad habit that basically boiled down to being obsessed with perfection. And I mean, like, to be fair, if his powers are literally to embody perfection in the eyes of his fans, I guess it does kind of make sense that he would be somewhat of a tweaker when it comes to maintaining that quote-unquote perfection, regardless of how bad of a habit it is for their relationship. But with that said, it's actually on that note of bad habits that I'd like to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Fume. The flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking. It's essentially a whole new movement to help kick these bad habits, and as it stands right now, that movement is currently being spearheaded by this little guy right here, called Fume. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that delivers natural, non-toxic flavor with no vapor, no nicotine, no electricity, none of that stuff. I mean, the air never even reaches your chest. You just draw through it and bring the flavor to your mouth without any of the usual downsides. Fume has dozens of flavors that you can choose from, ranging from sweet to spicy. Personally, I'm more of a sweet guy, and so I chose this orange vanilla flavor right here. Tastes kind of like a dreamsicle, but the flavor basically comes in this core, this little black core that you can see within the Fume right now, and all you do is take this little core, click it in the Fume like so, and then boom, you're ready to go. Because there's no electricity, you never have to worry about charging or anything like that. Whenever that vaping habit starts whispering in your ear on some demonic type stuff, you just pick up Fume instead, and slowly but surely, you can break that bad habit. If you're curious about trying Fume for yourself, go to tryfume.com/TeddySlump or scan the QR code on the screen and use the code TeddySlump to get a free topper when you order your journey pack. A topper is basically like this little rubber mouthpiece thing right here. It helps with the grip, you know, helps Fume stay more comfortably in your mouth. Pretty cool stuff. Thanks again to Fume for sponsoring this video, and now back to the video. We cut to a meeting between Lynn, Moon, and Miss J fine ass, where Miss J basically explains to Moon that she doesn't care if the real Nice is dead. She still expects Moon to play the role of Nice's partner for the public, as per the terms of her 360 deal that she signed way back whenever. As if that on its own wasn't already bad enough for Moon, Miss J then proceeds to up the ante. She's like, oh yeah, by the way, you two are getting married soon due to popular demand, and so yeah, be ready for that. Now, of course, the nigga Lynn, aka Moon's #1 fanboy, is hype as hell at this marriage prospect. He's over here big cheesing, talking about, I mean shit, it's in the contract, so I guess we gotta get married or something. But Moon, on the other hand, she's not feeling it, bruh. I reckon she's probably still that free-spirited IG travel blogger at heart, and so yeah, she kinda starts tweaking out upon realizing that she's basically signed herself away to an arranged marriage. In an attempt to try to combat Lynn's attraction/borderline obsession with her, Moon decides to show Lynn the quote-unquote real her, which basically just amounts to her frizzing up her hair a little bit and fucking elbow dropping through a grand piano for some reason. Like, Moon then further proceeds to take the splintered remains of the piano and convert that bitch into a grill somehow. Like, bro, this show really just be doing shit, bro, because how the fuck did her innovative ass make a functional grill out of a grand piano, and did she put the piano keys back into their rightful placement on the key bid? Yo, what is she on today, bruh? But yeah, Moon showing her real life tweak out tendencies only causes Lynn to fall for her even more, since, you know, now he gets to see her real, true, authentic self. And even though Moon never ends up reciprocating his feelings to the same degree, the two of them do end up growing pretty close as friends after Moon comes to realize that Lynn isn't the same obsessive perfectionist that she once knew Nice to be. That night, we get a scene between Lynn and Moon where we yet again uncover some pretty interesting lore about how the power system of this universe works. You see, because she doesn't trust her contractually obligated couple to stay put, particularly Moon that is, Miss J decided to lock Moon and Lynn inside Nice's penthouse from the outside in. And up until now, the question that's kind of been looming over this whole ordeal is like, okay, if Moon has a whole teleportation gun and she wants to be free, why doesn't she just teleport away from the penthouse and go MIA? The answer to this question basically comes down to the whole fan power dynamic that we discussed earlier in the video, where your fans not only imbue you with power, but also collectively determine how your powers function. Basically, because so many of her fans became invested in Moon's relationship with Nice, Moon's powers actually morphed to reflect that investment, and now her teleportation gun can only teleport her to be by Nice's side, which is absolutely crazy, by the way. Do you know how fucking mad I'd be if I think this is a pretty interesting exploration / commentary on like celebrity relationship dynamics, where a lot of times the lesser celebrity in a relationship will kind of start to be viewed as like an accessory of their more famous partner, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times, unless it's like a two-way power couple that are both kind of starting out on equal footing, the quote-unquote lesser celebrity will kind of lose their identity in the face of the public and instead be viewed more so as like so-and-so's boyfriend or so-and-so's girlfriend. And like, yeah, I don't know, I think the Moon teleportation debacle is a pretty interesting way of exploring that whole dynamic. But anywho, after a month of being trapped in the penthouse, rotting away in those same stank funky ass fits that they were wearing at the beginning of the month, the day of Moon and Nice's public marriage finally arrives, with a catch, of course. You see, the initial plan, like we discussed earlier, was to have Moon and Nice become wedlock in this public marriage, and then blah blah blah. Fans are happy, morale gets boosted, power gets more powerful. You get the idea. However, about a week before the marriage came to be, Lin proposed an alternative plan that they can follow, where basically they'll fake Moon's death at the wedding ceremony, and this in turn will simultaneously boost morale for Nice, since, you know, tragedy sells, but at the same time this will also free Moon from her 360 deal, since, well, in the eyes of the public at least, Moon is dead. Now, personally speaking, I was actually low-key won over by the writers having Lin be the one to propose this plan, because I'm not gonna hold you, bruh. Coming into this episode, I was worried they were gonna kind of shoehorn the plot in such a way where Moon was gonna somehow grow feelings for Lin, and then, you know, have the story play out as like this corny-ass wish fulfillment, marry your celebrity crush type fantasy. But look, bro, I was pleasantly surprised by the way they handled this whole situation, where they had Lin, despite his unrequited feelings, propose a plan that was in Moon's best interest as a friend, even if the plan ultimately meant that he himself wouldn't be around her like that anymore. I think that was a very adult, very mature thing to do, and you know what I'm saying? That's Big Lin, bro. Alright, he's officially earned the title of Big next to his name, because that's big boy moves, bro. Big boy emotional intelligence. Anywho, we cut back to this wedding, right? And the plan is commencing as, well, as planned. The idea was that the wedding was going to proceed as usual. They were going to give their vows all the way up until it was time to say I do. And then, just before they locked the shit in, they were going to orchestrate a villain attack that Moon has to quote unquote sacrifice herself to put a stop to. Now, first of all, before we even get into this villain attack, I knew that the Hero X world was shaping up to be this sort of unethical cesspool of bullshit that's way more focused on appearances than doing actual good. I think like that was basically established off the rip. But what I was not expecting was for them to go as far as to have literal fake villains signed onto the same agency as the heroes, so that these agencies could essentially manufacture conflict whenever the need to do so happened to arise. Like, yo, that is a wicked affair right there, I'm not gonna lie. But one of these fake ass villains, a nigga named Wreck, happens to be the villain that was sent to crash the wedding. And well, what I'm about to say is technically probably not canon, although if you have like any sort of media literacy or even a basic understanding of subtext, I don't see how you can deny what's essentially all but explicitly stated by Wreck himself. But I'm pretty sure this nigga Wreck was like in love with Nice, like mutually. Like these niggas were gay. I mean, technically Wreck refers to them as best friends, but like, alright, bro, if you actually listen to what bro is saying and then look at what's happening on the screen during like the flashbacks and shit, the two narratives are very much incongruent unless you assume that Wreck and Nice were in love. Like, it literally feels like the writers wrote out the whole script with Nice and Wreck as star-crossed lovers, and then retroactively went back and like Control F replaced the word boyfriend with best friend, because like, I'm not gonna hold you, bro, I have never had an alcohol tickle fight with the homie, bro. Like, I'm pretty sure there's something deeper going on with these two that, you know, maybe had to be written around due to like certain cultural constraints within China. But yeah, there's also the whole thematic element of having Wreck choose to crash the wedding. Like, come on, dog, let's put on our big boy brain meat for a second, bro. These sorts of things are not written on accident. Anywho, all that aside, Wreck decides to crash the party by trying to beat the shit out of Lin, who he can tell isn't actually nice. After a bit of back and forth squabble on the surface, Wreck decides to use like this earthbending ability to make these massive pillars of stone that go all the way up to the sky, above the clouds and everything, which like, holy shit, bro, what type of dumbass fine ass businesswoman decided to waste this OP ass nigga's ability for the sole and exclusive purpose of being a trust farmer for Nice? Anywho, once he and Lin are isolated, Wreck starts to press Lin, demanding that Lin tell him what happened to the real Nice. Moon tries to jump in and like get Wreck to focus on the mission at hand, aka killing her, but Wreck is not trying to focus on none of that right now, and he grabs the woman and like ragdolls her ass on some real disrespectful shit, bro. Whole time as this fight is going on, there's like this funny semi-comedic dynamic going on where Moon's stupid ass thinks this shit is all a game, like they're all just acting. Wreck is on the other end of the spectrum. He's really out here going crash mode, like really about to kill her ass. And then we got Lin in the middle trying to simultaneously de-escalate the situation with Wreck and escalate the situation for Moon so that she can understand how serious this shit really is. Lin ends up telling Wreck the truth about how Nice you know. And upon hearing that his best friend met his untimely demise at the hands of, well, himself, Rek has an absolute mental breakdown and he starts to shoot these black lasers at Moon and Nice, presumably trying to kill them. Now at this point, Miss J is like, hey bruh, mission failed, we'll get him next time. Like, you know shit is getting wild when you got Miss J trying to back out the mission. And she demands that Lin grabs Moon and, you know, gets the hell out of there. But Lin is like, oh hell nah, you see that animation style changing? Yeah, we about to go stupid out here. And Lin and Moon proceed to hit the 2v1 squabble on Rek, with the animators going absolutely bonkers with this fight scene, bro. I love how they switch the fight scenes to 2D oftentimes, because something about them 2D fight scenes, bro, just... Eventually, after Lin gets in his final blow, Rek is like, damn, that nigga just socked the shit out of me. Guess I'll die now. And he kind of just like lets himself fall off into the distance. I find it crazy because Lin definitely could have saved this nigga from actually dying. Like, in real life, like he could have, you know, just flown down there and catch him. But it appears that Lin was more focused on helping Moon sell her fake death than, you know, actually saving somebody, which is kind of a weird decision from the writers, I'm not gonna lie. Focusing on Lin looking tough as hell while Moon is fake dying in his arms. Meanwhile, we have an actual in progress self-despawn that's going on off screen in the background that like no one seems to care about is an interesting choice, to say the least. I don't know though, this show does seem to play pretty loosey-goosey with the whole idea of niggas just deleting their save file, and so, you know, maybe that's just the type of show we're dealing with, I guess. Anywho, Lin is able to put on a very good performance in response to Moon's fake out death, although I'm pretty sure he's just crying because he doesn't get to spend time with his celebrity crush anymore, which like, alright bruh, pack it up. But at Moon's fake funeral, Lin actually pulls a very W-man's move, and he tells all of Moon's fans to wish for her to be able to go wherever she feels free. Of course, the ignorant masses, thinking Moon is dead, probably assume that he means this in like a metaphorical afterlife or reincarnation type sense, but in actuality, he said this so that Moon's teleportation powers can be restored to the way they once were, since her fans are now wishing for her to be able to go wherever her soul desires. We get a cliffhanger involving Enlighter and the entity that seems to be the big bad of this entire Nice arc, but I'm still tight about that last bullshit ass cliffhanger that we got, and so I'm not going to engage in this one because I don't feel like it. But what you should engage in is clicking on that link in the description and checking out Fume to help you kick your bad habits.